Hey guys, my name is Zeke.
And my name's JJ.
And we have our guest here, Renee. And this is the Yute Room Podcast. And today we're bringing to you conversations with Black youth, for Black youth, not only for Black youth, but you get the drift. Today we're going to be talking about mental health. And before we get into that, I would like for our guest, Renee, to introduce ourselves.
All right. What's up, everyone? My name is Renee Titra. I am a registered psychotherapist. I am the owner and director of Renaissance Therapy. It's a space for everyone, but primarily the work that I do caters towards Black men and youth, helping them through a wide variety of mental health issues and concerns.
So would you consider yourself maybe like a specialist in this topic, like Black mental health?
Yeah, I would. I mean, a lot of my thesis work during my master's was kind of geared towards that and developing interventions and strategies to best support Black youth. Therapy in general tends to be very Eurocentric and very white, right? When you think of therapy, you think of Freud, right? Sitting there with his pipe and, on this couch and sofa. So, a lot of what Freud did influenced psychotherapy in general. And there wasn't a lot of like marginalized and Black voices in therapy itself. So hopefully the work that I do tries to like bring a little bit of flavor into the conversation.
Yeah, flavor indeed. And we're excited to hear more about that as we get into things. Let's just start things off with the icebreaker question. So what did you guys do for your mental health this week?
Personally, my mental health has been kind of all over the place. What I tend to do is I really calm down and relax with music. So music is a very big outlet for me, as well as sports are. So I want to say I probably listened to my favorite album to calm down from mental health this week.
Hear that.
For me, actually, I just came back from vacation. So,
oh, cool.
That was like my little kind of break.
Where'd you go?
I went to Aruba.
Actually.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is, to be honest with you.
It's in the Caribbean, so we're like in the south, close to South America.
Caribbean, cool.
But typically, like I actually like to play video games a lot. To kind of decompress after a stressful day, right? And just being very intentional with like when and how I play video games, and not so it doesn't become like a crutch or anything like that. So just using that to like kind of decompress, looking at my body, like feeling the anxiety and the stress kind of like decreasing, and then going back to what I have to do afterwards.
Yeah, it's a good way to literally cool down, from what happened today. And me personally, I love to listen to music. More so like I'm an instrumentalist, so like I play sax. I also play the keyboard. I'm learning the guitar right now, and I sing a little bit. So like from what I'm telling you can tell I like to make a lot of noise when I'm stressed. Right? So my family sometimes gets tired of me, especially at night. But yeah, I'm trying to be more considerate of others when we do that stuff. But for sure, play music, go to the gym, anything to really get my head out of whatever dark space it's in, to come out to a brighter place. But yeah, with all that being said, talking about mental health is a touchy topic, especially in our Black community. So before we ask and address the stigma within our community, what is mental health to you?
That's a really loaded question to start with. I think like when we think about mental health, we can kind of break it down into like three factors, right? We could think about our emotional health, right? So like, as we just described, like the difference of emotions that we're experiencing, right? We can also talk about our psychological health, right? Which is like maybe like some of the stress or our approaches to things. And then also our social health. So that's like the big key one, especially for Black youth, right? When we think of mental health, it's like a lot of, like I said, the mentals, the internal factors, and not necessarily the external factors, right? So I think mental health in and of itself encompasses all three of them together. And like through therapy, that's like what we tend to look at. It's not just, I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling nervous. It's also, hey, what's happening around in life? What are some of the expectations that are being placed on me? Maybe that I'm aware of, maybe that I'm not aware of, that are impacting how I'm showing up in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good answer, and it's true. It's not really a simple cut and paste answer, as you said, and you touched on expectations a lot, and what we expect ourselves to be, what our family expects ourselves to be, what our peers expect ourselves to be. So, just moving on to the stigma within our Black community, why do you think there is, such a, not to say hate towards mental health, But yeah, all of us can chime in here, honestly.
Non-belief towards mental health in a sense.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's really tough. Like, blackness is treated as a monolith, but it's not, right? I'm from the West Indies, right? And JJ, where are you from?
I'm from here, but my mother was born in Jamaica.
Mother's born in Jamaica. And Zeke?
I'm born here, but I'm originally from Ghana.
You're from Ghana, right? So, I mean, we have 3 black men here, right? But we all get lumped into the same category, but we have different cultures, right? And when we think of the story of black people, right, it's wrought with, you know, it's like slavery and oppression and systemic racism and prejudice, right? And a lot of times, like within that, mental health isn't really like discussed. It isn't really, you know, it's perseverance that we're taught. It's pushing through. Look what your ancestors did. They endured these terrible things and they just, you know, sucked it up and did it, right? And they overcame it in whatever way that they did, right? And there was little space for us to actually feel our emotions, right? We were fighting for our lives, so to speak. So there's like this stigma that's just really associated with it. And also if we're talking about men, right? Like, what does it mean to be a man? Right, especially nowadays, right? Feminism gets a lot of love, right?
Yeah,
a lot of attention, right? They've done some great work to redefine what a woman is, but like, where's that same work to redefine what a man is, and more specifically, what a black man is, right? And I think we're a little bit lost there. So it's obviously a lot of, you know, strength and bravado and courage and all these things, and there's no real space for emotions, right? You know, when was the last time you all cried?
Like cried in public?
Yeah. Like when was the last time you cried in front of someone?
Ooh.
Never.
I would say in front of one of my bros. Yeah, last week I'll say.
Last week?
If I'm being honest. Yeah, I'll be honest with last week.
Okay. But JJ, like why never?
I don't know. It's just, I guess it's that whole kind of fortitude and that whole bravado I try to walk with, or I try to get from my, like, I've never seen my father cry. It's like that's like kind of like the whole tough man attitude, I guess. Definitely cried though, but just not ever in front of anyone.
In front of it. Yeah.
Being that you are in that kind of mental health space, have you seen a improvement on black men showing their mental health and going to therapy over the years, or is it that still kind of stigma where they don't bother? Have you seen an improvement, or is there?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I've seen like, and I'm a little bit biased, but I've seen like a massive improvement. Like, oh, really? I was like pleasantly surprised at, not to like shamelessly plug myself, but like how quickly like my practice filled up with like black men, right? Just showing up and ready to do the work. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of pain, and going back to that stigma part, I think it's just like eliminating a barrier, right? And representation matters in this moment. So, you know, just showing up and having more black therapists and having more conversations like this about mental health, right, decreases that stigma and reduces that barrier so that people can show up. Because I honestly believe in my heart that like we are ready collectively, right? As a race, right? As black men, we're ready to have these conversations, right? And to show up to therapy and cry, right?
Yeah, honestly speaking, and you talked about removing a barrier, and you're also by doing so creating that space for people to be vulnerable with their emotions and honestly like address what they need to address. That whole perseverance attitude is good, and it was necessary for us to get to where we are now. But honestly speaking, it causes us to push aside and put aside everything that may have been important, you know, to us, and we don't talk about how that makes us feel. So do you think that is why mental health is not talked about enough, like let's just say within our homes or within you know, our schools, especially towards black students? For example, in my house specifically, I cannot be sad, right? It's not possible. You're not sad. Why are you sad? You have everything. You know, you have clothes, you have water, you have the game, you have a basketball, you know? You can go to the gym, you can go to the mall whenever you want. What's missing in your life, right? And I feel like that whole mentality within our home and black community causes us to suffer in silence, right? And yeah, so why else do you guys think that continues to happen despite all the knowledge that is out in our world today and all the internet access, I can say, that's available to us?
Funny enough, I kind of have a opposite household to that. My mom, it's the same kind of way that yours is gonna run, but my mom constantly checks on me, makes sure I'm good. She always asks me questions. How's your mental health? How you're doing with school, work, friends, all that kind of stuff. Typically, I just tell her I'm all right. Even when I'm not all right, I tell her I'm all right. I don't really know why that is. That's probably a bad thing now that I'm saying it out loud, but that's just how I go about. I don't know if you have any pointers on why that is, or...
I mean, it's interesting, right? So mom is checking in on you and you are still just saying that you're okay, right? And I mean, I suspect that a lot of it is like that performance piece of having to show the world that you're strong, right? Like you alluded to earlier, like I cry by myself, but I don't cry in front of other people. And mom's the same way. Like I need to be this man in front of mom. She raised me. You said your dad never showed emotions, right? This is like patterns that we learn from our families, right? You know, growing up in a Ghanaian home, sure, dad was this like tough big figure,
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, you're not allowed to show that emotions, and they frequently reference, hey, things were maybe a little bit like more difficult back home. We made these sacrifices for you, right? And in that dialogue itself, like that sacrifice we made by coming here for you puts a lot of pressure on you to succeed.
It's
right?
true. It's true.
It's a lot of pressure.
It makes you feel like you have to be perfect. You know what I mean? You have to rise to every occasion. You can't fail. You can't mess up, right?
Can't mess up.
And when you walk around with all that, you know, load and pressure on your back, like when you break, you really don't know what to do, right? Yeah. And we see that today. And I feel like that's why lots of people are flooding into your business, because you did create that space where people can really sit down and heal, because it takes time, right? And you posed the question before, like, what is a man, right? What is a black man? So when it especially comes to our expectations, do you think the expectations of what a black man is in society, is that conducive to our mental health? Like, for, you know what I mean? Like growing up, the standards that what you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to look like, how you're supposed to sound, how you're supposed to talk, right? Talking, for instance, I remember when I was younger, I didn't use slang much, right? Because in my house, no one uses slang, right? It's either you're speaking English or my mom's speaking Tree, right? So when I go outside, I'll usually call, you know, white, right? And that did something to my head. So much so, like, I picked up the slang real quick in grade 6, grade 7, right? And I changed my whole lingo. I changed my whole speech because of that, right? So back to my question. So do the expectations of society of what a black man is that further worsening our mental health, or is it helping us out?
I mean, I can go so many different places with that question. I want to ask you, JJ, right? Because Zeke posed the question. When I say black man, who or what do you think of?
When you say, I think of my father, because that's my idol, really. Since I've been young, I've always tried to be better than my father, because he tried to be better than his father. So anyway, I can succeed him in that point. That is me being a strong black man. That's in my point of view. I try not to judge myself or compare myself to anyone else, because it's a slippery slope, and that will affect your mental health severely if you try to compare yourself to someone who's in a possibly a much better position that you are or has more stuff than you. But I just try to be better than my father.
Okay. All right. I like that. I like that you have like a permanent figure that's like that you grew up with in your household that you could, you know, kind of emulate, right? But faults and all, right? Everything that you said about your father, I'm sure he's a wonderful man, right? Raised you to, you know, go to university, do all the right things. But also there's the emotional piece that maybe he didn't develop and that you're kind of picking up on now, right? And Zeke, you touched on a really wonderful point about the idea of code switching. So there's been a lot of theories about this. I think Du Bois said this like a million years ago about the idea of this double consciousness, right? So as black men, and this is where like our mental health really suffers, is that like we exist in two realms. We exist in who we are, like our structures culturally, right, within our home. And then we exist also in how like dominant society perceives us, right? And you constantly go back and forth between the two. Okay, so, and there's a lot of stress in between that. Nowadays, we kind of call it code switching, right? So in certain spaces, you change your pattern of speech, you change your body language, your demeanor, right? And that is exhausting. That takes a lot of effort, right? For a lot of Black men, and where our mental health tends to suffer is something called hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance.
When you're walking down the streets, you may not be like consciously aware of it, but you are picking up on things, right? When we watch videos of like George Floyd or all these people that are like killed, right, by police officers, it reminds us of ourselves, right? And every interaction, I'm sure you guys can attest to this, that you have with a police officer, right? Your senses are heightened. And this is what it's like every single day. When you're in white spaces, when you're in school, wherever you are, you're constantly aware that you are Black and you are code switching to protect yourself. And that has negative consequences on your mental health, right? But we don't have the avenue to speak about it, right? We don't.
That's so true, because it's a shared experience we all have, and I feel like we just do it naturally. And when you were talking about the police thing, I remember one time my friend and I were just leaving the gym, right? And he's from Guyana, so you already know his car slammed to the ground, tinted windows, right? We're 16, 17. And we're just sitting in the parking lot, getting ready to go. We got some shawarma, just relaxing. Of course, the police officer is doing their patrol and he notices his car, right? So he knocks on the window. I immediately unbuckle my seatbelt, right? And my hands are just, out in front. He's like, yo, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, man. I just did that naturally, right? So just put myself out there, right?
Or were you conditioned to do that? What have you seen that taught you that is the appropriate response?
I mean, I've seen people getting taken out of their car just for being Black. Like I was sitting in the back, right? And just being patted down, asked all these questions for no real reason, just because you look like, a certain character, right? So even when you ask the question, what does a Black man to JJ? When I first thought of my community, right? I thought of my family, then 50 Cent popped into my head as well, right? So I'm like, that's what the world perceives us as, as a danger, right? As a threat. And I feel like that also causes us to be scared of ourselves at times, right? And I also wanted you to touch more on the negative consequences of that double consciousness you were talking about before. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's, like you said, like using that role model is 50 Cent, right? Like JJ wonderfully said, like talked about his father. A lot of images that we do get though of successful Black people, right? Of role models are people like 50 Cent, are people like from my generation, people like Tupac, and then it's maybe a little spicy, but like the inverse to that is a Martin Luther King, which are all weaponized equally against us, right? Martin Luther King, like, although he's wonderful, I'm not taking anything away, the way that he's packaged to us is this is the way that you need to be. You need to be docile. You need to be proper, right? You need to wear a suit and speak eloquently, as you said, right? And when you don't fulfill that role, what happens? Right? What happens when you are not able to? Maybe you're from Rexdale or you're from Scarborough and you have a bit of an accent, right? And you can't fulfill that stereotype or that archetype that society has created that a proper Black person should be, right? Then you suffer, right? Then you start associating the negative things in your life with the fact that you can't attain that or you can't reach that, right? So the alternative is those two. But that's not true, right? There's a wide spectrum of how we can be, right? You're from Ghana, right? You speak Twi. I'm from Dominica. We speak Patois where I'm from, right? There's a difference between us, and we're not allowed to celebrate that, right? 50 Cent is Black American. Like, I mean, the truth to be told, our skin tone is the only thing that really binds us. Like culturally, they're very different.
Yeah,
how we are, right? But yet we're forced to have to live up to that expectation. And that weighs on our mental health because that creates anxiety, right? Like you said, people said you spoke white, right? That's an expectation that people put on you, society. And you've had to adjust and make those tweaks in your life to overcome it, whatever which way you can,
And you see that a lot in youth today. Sometimes they want to be aggressive. They don't want to be docile. And when I say aggressive, like they're trying to be dominant, just to push that whole narrative, away, and they don't want to necessarily conform to society. But that sometimes that can also be detrimental as well, right? When you're so way off, right?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, and you don't end up becoming not to say a sensible person, but someone who's able to function in society as well, because you're so caught up in that kind of life and that kind of ideology, right?
I'm fed this image of who I should be, and it's called stereotype threat. It's literally you actually trying to fill that image. It's not necessarily who you are, but you're just taught you're socialized at a young age to be this person. I need to be 50 Cent. I need to be on the street. I need to be, doing the most, right? And I have to fill that role, because not just society, the music that I listen to teaches me that, but also teachers have that subconscious or unconscious expectations of us, right? How quickly were we labeled to be a bad kid or a troublemaker, right? When really, maybe we were just like, we didn't know how to express that we needed something, right? So now it's other people's views on us that are shaping our reality and how we view ourselves.
Yeah, because really imposed onto us and our character, right? Growing up. JJ, I know you can probably attest to, as we were in school, you probably been treated differently by a teacher, once or twice, I can probably say, right?
Yeah, I have a opposite kind of example. I grew up in Richmond Hill. Not a lot of black people in Richmond Hill.
Yeah, sure.
I think I was maybe in elementary school, one of 4 black kids in my entire school. Growing up with, I wouldn't say lack of black community, but there wasn't, obviously, besides my family and besides me playing basketball, there wasn't a lot around me. Would you say that has a negative effect on like the black? Like, I feel as if I don't have a connection with my black roots because I don't have as many black friends to hang out with. So growing up in, I don't know, say you grew up in an area that's not Durham or Ajax or Pickering, how would you kind of cope with that mental health in a sense?
I mean, the answer to that is, I think it's different for everyone. Like your, what we call cultural salience. So it's your connection to your parents' culture, to Jamaica, so to speak, would protect you from a lot of that, right? If you did not have that, then there could be a avenue for some questioning in terms of your racial identity, right? So, right, like going back to the Zeke, like being from Ghana, if you have a very strong Ghanaian households, right, and you have a lot like customs and cultures, and you eat your jollof and all that great stuff, right? That can protect you. It can insulate you from the fact that maybe that you are like the only black person in a certain space.
True.
To a degree, right? And then for you, JJ, like without that, it can lead to a lot of questioning, right? And trying out some of those archetypes that we talked about, those 50 Cents, those Tupacs or whatever, to figure out who you are, right? Maybe adopting different cultures, taking a little bit from here and there to try to figure out who your identity is and who you are as a person, right? So that's how it can really impact your mental health, right? It's tough because like tribalism is a real thing, right? We definitely feel safer around people who tend to look like us. And if we're in these spaces where we are othered and minority, that can really have some negative mental health like outcomes for some of us, right?
Yeah, it can cause a lot of stress too.
Cause a lot of stress.
It's like people don't understand you. Like maybe you may say something that's culturally relevant, right? And the person might not get it, or maybe the way you communicate, they might assume that you're angry, you're being aggressive, but no, you're just showing passion in a sense, right? Because every culture has a different way of showing emotion, right? And especially since, as we're talking about as black males, we often don't get the opportunity to be vulnerable with our own emotions, right? When we do show emotion, it can be perceived in the wrong way, right?
Threatening right off the jump.
Exactly. And people often take that all the way home and go crazy. But coming back to mental health as well. So when it comes to expressing our emotions, right, and just dealing with mental health, right, do you think that we were taught the right ways or given the right tools? Just maybe you could base it off the school system that you see today or in the past, but do you think that we were raised with the necessary, JJ shaking his head no already.
I mean, the answer to that is no.
Necessary information, to have good mental health, I could say.
Absolutely not, right? I mean, like the stigma, the barriers to mental health, like the idea of, if you were to express some sort of emotion, then you're labeled as crazy or weak, for that matter. Like we don't know how to express ourselves, right? We see that a lot in relationships, right? Between even like hetero relationships between, you know, a man and a woman, right? The man not being emotionally available, not being able to communicate what he's actually experiencing, right? We a lot of us, I don't want to like paint everyone with the same brush, but a lot of us default to anger, right? As the primary emotion. It could be frustration, it could be sadness, it could be disappointment, but it comes out as anger all the time, right? We don't have the verbiage yet, right? We haven't had the conversations to be able to express ourselves in a variety of different ways, right? And the beauty with therapy is that's exactly what we do. Like if there's anything that we do in therapy, it's just to give you more language so that you can begin to express yourself in different ways, right? So instead of, you know, saying that, you know, this thing made me very upset and I'm like throwing a temper tantrum, it's, I was really hurt by your actions. And that will have a different response and different outcome.
Yeah. As a therapist, do you think there is anything that you would implement within either elementary school or high school or even university that would kind of help the progression of youth dealing with mental health?
That's a good question.
That's a really great question. Wow, I gotta think about that for a second. But there's something that I would implement in you said elementary school, high school, or university?
Yeah, either yeah. Or I'll make it easier. At what age would you start teaching them?
I mean, it'd be as early as possible. Yeah,
really, so they're like 3, 4, 5 around that age.
Yeah, 3, 4, 5. You know, just again, like we've all been parented a certain way, right? Switching up that parenting a little bit. You know, again, having some different types of conversations about emotions very early on, right? Even the types of emotions that are being expressed at home, right? Like we're all human. Your parents are human. Right. But if you do something bad, then it's typically received with anger, right? Flipping that, right? Express disappointment, express frustration with your child, right? Do these things so that they can understand the nuances and differences between emotions. And they can also learn how to express their emotions, right? The difference between I'm feeling hungry, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling tired. Right. This is actually a natural part of human evolution, right? Because when we're babies, what happens? When we're hungry, we cry. When we're sad, we cry. When we're hurt, we cry. It's the same thing. But as we get older, it begins to evolve, right? We have different words, but then it seems like collectively we stop at a certain point and we stop evolving, right? What I would like to see is a continuation of that evolution, and we achieve that through having conversations at school, having conversations with mom and dad, right? And whoever our parents happen to be.
If those conversations are taken place in school, or I don't know whether that's by your guidance counselor or even a therapist at the school, do you believe that it should be catered based on their race?
That's a good question.
Do you think it should be taught in a different, like should it be taught the same way no matter boy, girl, or should it differ?
That's a load. I mean, no. I mean, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say I don't think it should be catered by race. I'm really big on this idea of race not being or blackness in general, just not being a monolith. And like Zeke, like you said, there's nuances and differences between culture and how we express ourselves. And I think with race, there becomes an assumption that you may understand something. And this is like the problem with cultural competency, is that like I may think that I know you because I'm black, right? But I honestly don't, right? And I need to actually like leverage my experience to then be able to understand your experience. So I think to answer your question, JJ, no, I think it should be, as with therapy, it should be individualized to the specific person that's in front of you. The type of conversation, how they communicate, what level they're at in terms of their ability to express themselves. So I think that it should be like, it should be catered to every single individual.
I agree with that as well. I don't think it's going to be a cookie cutter thing too, because even all of us sitting in the room right here, we all have very different personalities, right? And we probably won't respond to the same cues or the same like questions, you know, the way it is intended. If we were all sitting in one room and someone asked us, how are you all feeling today? Someone will say good, someone will say good, someone will say good. And there's 2 lies and 1 truth in the room, right?
Yeah.
So you'll definitely need a more personalized approach, for sure. And just speaking, talking to your guidance counselor. During high school, right? They flagged me. They said, oh shoot, I think you need to go talk to this person, right? Just going through grade 9, I wasn't too interested in school. Sometimes I wouldn't come to class. Sometimes, I wouldn't be too interested in what's going on, take a nap here and there, go to lunch early, stuff like that. So nothing crazy. But yeah, upon talking to the first guidance counselor, she was a white lady, right? She was kind, 100%. I did respect her, but I didn't open up to her just because I didn't feel like necessarily safe, per se. But we ended up finding someone who was black, right? And black lady, and she was able to talk to me slowly but surely. I did open up to a certain extent, and I was able to get, some guidance or just, be put in the right direction, of course, right? And you talked about us assuming that we know each other, and she didn't assume that she knew me. She took her time to say, oh, what is this in your life, right? Because automatically when you make that assumption, you diminish that person's problems as well, right? And you end up ignoring the person as a whole, and we don't want to do that, right? Especially when we're talking to our friends, and people are sharing their burdens or sharing their struggles. Sometimes you always dismiss it. Oh, I went through that too. Oh, I already know how that's gonna end up. You're gonna make it through it, right? All good words, all good intentions, but did you really hear the person out and address the situation? And I feel like that is the thing that we all need to learn, right? You talked about language. You talked about us needing to learn more, and language leads to understanding, right? Understanding allows us to solve the problem. So if we don't ever get to that point where we learn that language, we can never truly understand each other. So I'll pose JJ's question again, I guess in a different way. What do you think a person who's, let's just say, just turned 13, 14, just entering their teens, what can they do practically, right, to better their language, and so they can better understand not only others but themselves, and overall improve their mental health?
Read.
Oh, okay.
Read. I mean, books hold all the knowledge, right? It's funny, in like preparation for this episode, I was rereading this book by Bell Hooks called We Real Cool. And it's about black masculinity and redefining that masculinity. And understanding the impacts of the patriarchy and how it has shaped their views of ourselves and our access to mental health. So I think for the black youth, like educating themselves, leveraging the internet, reading books, having conversations with your friends about emotions, talking about things, I think is really, really important, right? Those 2 things right there, just reading some books and talking to your friends. If you're sad, hey bro, I'm sad. I'm sad today, right? And just flexing that emotion muscle a little bit and working through things together, I think is really important. It's going to help you understand what you're experiencing on the inside, and it helps other people validates and empathize with you as well, right? It's like you said, you cry with your boy, right? Talk to your people around you, right? If it's safe to do so, right? It doesn't need to be all your friends in the GC. It could be one guy, and just talk. Hey man, I'm feeling a little down today, man.
Back on just the book topic. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if just for our viewers, if there is one book you could recommend, one book, and for myself as well, because
honestly, I'm about to go read it right after this, man.
One book, like mental health.
One book. Yeah. Mental health,
mental health
or growth in general, really.
One book.
If you were to go back to your 14-year-old self, what book would you give to him? To help him overcome and navigate life,
would I even read this book? I would say, okay, this is now the book's kind of mutated, but I think a really wonderful book, and a book that's been super impactful for me because it showed and discussed mental health for a teen, was The Catcher in the Rye. Holden Caulfield has you see him go through these struggles, right? And he talks about it in this really candid way, which for my 14-year-old self was really validating and affirming and reinforcing. That would be the one book that I'd recommend for the youth to go and read. Read The Catcher in the Rye. It's a good book. Right. It's short, so it's not like super long. and yeah, it will like kind of, I think, give you the freedom to be able to begin to express yourself because you're witnessing someone else do it.
Wow. Yeah, and that's the greatest way to learn, watching and, copying and repeating. So if you guys had one last thing to tell our viewers and maybe to summarize everything we talked about today regarding mental health, or maybe just, something to leave them with, what would you say?
I would say don't be afraid to show your weakness and don't be afraid to talk to your people because it's better than trying to crumble under pressure. That's what I would say personally.
Yeah, I love it. Like, you don't have to go it alone, right? It takes a village, and recognizing where we need help, and reaching out for that support, right? There are avenues, there are spaces that are for you, right? And yeah, like accessing them. And if you have trouble, taking that first small step, like even if it's talking to a friend and allowing that friend to help you access those spaces, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, that's really true. And honestly, I'll say the same thing. Like, lean on your community, lean on your brothers, because they are there for you. There's people that care about you, people that love you, and you really don't have to go through it alone. So honestly, just say, don't suffer in silence, make the choice right now and speak up, speak up for yourself. And yeah, I guess that's it. That's it for today. And this is the Yute Room Podcast, and we'll be back with you next week. All right.